holy invisible man.
Well, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on Musical Mire. And it's unusual actually for Musical Mire for us to be late, but so we had, because we didn't have a show on Saturday, all the technical issues waited for today. And I think somebody's listening. Okay, someone was listening there, right? Okay, so an introduction. My name is Mark David Stallard, lead singer for It's All in the Mind. This is, the other way is, introduce yourself. You're a big boy now.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ryan Janz. We do have, or usually have, a little running gig or joke about us. Mark, his stage presence, his stage name is Mark David Stallard, which is obviously his middle name. My name is also Ryan David Janz. Mark uses his middle name, but I don't tend to use my middle name. So, anyways,
and
that point,
and the irony is that I don't need to use it, but you should. You should use yours. Right.
Probably should. Yeah.
Okay,
that's a discussion for off air.
Okay, just want to say hi to Catherine joining us from Fleetwood in England, and Pauline Santoro is joining us. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it's great to see you guys. Thanks for joining us. So we have a topic for discussion that is probably, we're going to add to the debate, the never-ending debate among musicians, analog versus digital. What is better?
Digital, analog. Oh, sorry. Jumping ahead.
It's there we go. You be odds, I'll be evens, and there we go.
Snake eyes.
That's how we're going to solve this issue. No. We're going to go over it in some depth. Mark has been making music a lot longer than I have, which is awesome because it's been just a pleasure to work with him. But Mark, you have undoubtedly had to use analog equipment in your past.
Indeed, and when I started, the instruments were also black and white. So it's been a while.
As was the rest of the world, right? It was like that one, was that 1990s movie where it was all black and white and then everything started turning color. Someone in the comments, yeah, there you go. You can tell us what that movie is. We'll test your movie knowledge. But so Mark has done some recording with analog equipment. I have actually done some analog equipment. Actually, in the studio, there is a music school that does music production and all kinds of musical stuff here in Winnipeg. It's called I don't remember what it's called, but its acronym is MOSMA. I'll have to look that up to see what that is. But they've got a full-on recording studio, and they use 1.25" tape, professional 1.25" magnetic tape, to do all their recordings. And as a final project for any aspiring recording engineers, you have to get a local band and have them come in, and they basically give you free studio time. But you get one song and you have like 2 hours to lay it down. So you have to know your music and know your song, and that's it. They'll mix it and they'll sample it, and then they'll do everything for free because it's their final project. But you got to know your stuff.
Right.
So without getting too far into it, we're actually going to start talking about some of the cons of both digital and analog. Coffee hasn't kicked in yet. It's been a long day. So anyways, so we'll start off with their cons of let's start on with some of the cons of it being digital. Digital is often marketed as cheap, but just because it's cheap and easy to come by doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get good quality, or good doesn't mean that you're automatically going to lay down an amazing track. So there's a real art to recording, and it's a steep learning curve. So the hardware might be easily accessible and might be relatively cheap, but you still have to learn how to capture it at the right bit rate, and so that you have good quality, and learning how to do things like punch in and turns. There's a pretty steep learning curve. In fact, when we did our album, Mark, you got a copy of that CD there? We can show off to everyone.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the best CD ever.
Yeah.
There you go. Oh, that was the wrong one.
There's that one, yeah.
That was the wrong one. Here you go. There we are.
Yeah, there we go. It's all in the mind.
Yeah, I think we've about 3 or 4 left, I think, now. Anyway.
Yeah, there you go. I might have 2 or 3 left in the basement. I'd have to look.
Actually, before we go forward, let's just maybe if you can define what you mean by digital versus analog. I mean, just a quick definition so that we're all agreeing what those terms mean.
Okay, so when I say digital, I mean fully capturing everything and with no physical media. You're not putting it onto tape. You're not putting it onto a little cassette tape or 1.25-inch tape or 2-inch tape. Nothing physical is actually recorded. It only exists in a computer or a microprocessor. That's digital, right? And then that could get transported to like a physical hard drive or a jump drive or some other type of storage media, but it is not like a magnetic tape. That's what I mean by analog. Okay. In the process. So analog would mean you're getting like a reel-to-reel, or you're using an 8-track with cassette tapes, or a 4-track recording system with cassette tapes, with that 1/4-inch tape or whatever it is that the standard is. That's what I mean by analog.
Okay.
We're not going to go into the pitfalls, because we go into a whole other show about whether or not digital effects pedals and all that, and the pros and cons of using that versus actual analog electronics. So that's a whole different topic for a whole different other show.
Yep.
So that's what I mean. We're just strictly talking about capturing the music, the sound, the voices, the instruments. That's what we're talking about. Okay. So hardware and software can get really expensive fast. This is more cons on being digital. So you can go down, like I went to Long and McQuaid, local or Canadian music store on Boxing Day, and bought a Scarlett 2-channel digital capture device, which pretty much is what I'm using to capture my audio here. It's part of my rig. I've recorded some music with it. It's fully digital. It goes USB into my computer, and that's how I capture it. That cost me $125 on sale, a Boxing Day sale. I think it retails for about just under $200 if you bought it brand new. So relatively cheap. If you've even got a day job, that shouldn't be a problem. But the bigger issue is that if I wanted to add more channels, and I wanted to put it in my rack mount thing that I have here for all our recording, that jumps from 100 to 600 or 200 to 600 very fast. So, and it's a little higher quality. There's better internal preamps for mics. So it gets pretty expensive pretty fast. So it's, when they say it's cheap, yeah, but if you want to get better software and better hardware, you pay for it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I have an M Audio device that's very similar to that Scarlett one you have, and this predates Windows. I think it was Windows XP. I bought this so I could record capture stuff, and I did it just so I could record demos. But we actually used this device. It was very versatile. We actually used it for our CD. I think I pretty much captured all the vocals and acoustic guitar, whatever else. And I've also, and that was probably around that range too, maybe $150, maybe $100 at the time. It was a few years back. But I got I've got a 16 or an 8-track desk that has a hard drive in it, and with the I can split it off into 16 inputs, and it can do all kinds of things. But yeah, learning curve. Every time I use it, I have to break out the manual again, because I mean, I'm practicing, I'm performing, but I'm not recording as often as all that. So it's you got to learn it, and then sometimes you got to learn it again because you lose it. The simpler device, way easier, because there's almost no knobs on it, right? 3 knobs. So there's and the price difference too. That Boss device I got, and I think it was $800, and it retailed for about $1,500.
Yeah.
So that's a lot difference, a lot of a difference. So
it's a big price difference. So digital doesn't necessarily mean it's cheap. It can be, and don't get me wrong, that M Audio, when you buy our CD and listen to it, that's all done on the M Audio. I didn't have enough money to buy my Scarlett, which is probably a slight bit better because it's newer, right? And Scarlett sort of has like bragging rights about having really good preamps for mics and stuff like that, and blah 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 blah. Sales pitch over. it's just a little newer, but the sound quality that came out of it was great. It was perfectly fine, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we had to farm out the mix or the mastering for the tracks, but I mean, to capture the raw data and to give a rough mix and to do everything the way that we wanted, it did absolutely everything that we wanted it to.
Right.
So you can't ask for more. We got our money's worth 100%, or well,
sure.
Mark got his money's worth 100%
Yeah.
out of it
And
because
then
it was
some,
it's.
I think just a comment from Dolly Dunn has joined us. Hi, Dolly. Yeah, she's had a negative experience, looks like, from M Audio. I'm not sure what the model that would be, but I guess it depends on what you are using it for, what model you had. I mean, though, just because one M Audio device is good doesn't mean they all are. And I'm definitely not a salesman for them, but my device is great for what we use it for. But yeah, plus the pros and cons, right? It's you got to find the right piece of equipment for the right job and for the right person. Yeah.
And you know what the truth is? I've looked up the reviews for the Scarlett box that I have, and there's lots of people who said that it's mixed, right? There's some people say, hey, this little thing didn't do what I wanted it to do, and the cut-in filter was too much, so I couldn't play as loud as I wanted to, blah, 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 blah. Okay, fine. And then the other side were, hey, it's great. And it's perfectly fine for what we're doing here. It's been great for me to capture all my stuff, so I'm perfectly fine with it. But when you get into the higher end, the Pro Series, you don't end up seeing a lot of reviews. Right. So it's hard to gauge, right? So if you say, hey, I want that 8-track Scarlett rack mount for $800, what's it been like? Well, we don't get many returned. That's the review. So if they don't get many returned, then must be a good product.
Yeah, for sure. Oh yeah, actually, Dolly just she now uses a Behringer Henix Q82 USB. So I'll have to look that up. Not sure what that particular one is, but yeah, it's all. So that I think that's as good as a recommendation. Dolly Dunn's using it, and she's done some great recordings.
And there's this fella, Chris Brett, has joined us, has actually given us a thumbs up on the Scarlett series. He says it's one of the best buys on the market, and it does actually come with some software. I don't use Cubase or Pro Tools. Mark has all that stuff. I'm sure the Scarlett has some plugs, but yes, Scarlett actually has a big database, not just on their CDs that they pass, but also on their website. I believe there's a whole database for it. So, so again, this will be a big pro that we come back to. There's actually quite a bit of resources for that. But so the flip side to that is the cons of analog. Okay, so we've talked about how expensive and how quickly it can become expensive for analog or for digital. Analog, no matter how you look at it, is always going to be more expensive. Always, always, always. At one point, maybe the material was more readily accessible. There was more tape. There's different types of recording media. That stuff is not being produced nearly as much anymore. There's only a couple of companies that make magnetic tape for high-end studios because there's so few studios actually doing analog recording. You got to be a skilled professional. Like, this isn't something you can just do in your basement with like you might be able to do it with like a 4-track cassette recorder, but getting a 2-inch reel, going reel to reel, and learning how to cut and splice and edit and do all that's skilled professional work, man. People go to school for that stuff. So
there are devices. I remember the first time we recorded, we had no idea what we were doing. There was a guy that we knew at church that had just recently bought, and he was like an old man. He was like about 25, 27. We were in our 18, 19, so he seemed like an old man. But he had this device, he had some money, and it was one of the first cassettes, ordinary cassette that had the 4 channels on it. And the big con on that, it sounded great, is that there were no digital effects, of course. So analog, the reverb, we actually set up in the church hall, where we'd have all the where you go for coffee after the service. And we'd have the mics set up, and then there'll be 2 mics halfway down, or another mic rather halfway down the hall, and then another mic right at the end of the hall to catch the reverb. So
Yeah.
it was actually we had to be really inventive about how we were going to catch that reverb, and even though we were able to record I think we recorded the drums and the guitars at the same time, not having a click track. That's how long ago that was. And
Well, I don't think you had enough things for click
Yeah.
tracks. There's not enough place for
and then we record the individual vocals, but it's a performance. You can't then go, oh, cut me in here because I got that chorus wrong.
That's right.
And the fun little was oh, that sounds a bit empty. This guy was telling us, I forget his name, Chris, I think his name was who was being our first producer, and he says, okay, yeah, it's a bit empty. Can you put another harmony on that? Oh yeah, I can do a harmony. I can probably stick a third harmony on that. And I was singing away, and I hadn't worked the harmony out, and I'm squealing away, thinking I think that's okay. I'm still trying to find it. The song ends, and I could hear from the other room where they've got the mixing desk. They bawled laughing, because I'd made such an ass of myself. Apparently, I can't sing the third harmony without lots of practice. Anyhow, so and that's it. It's on there. You've got to start again from the beginning. And,
so
I got it in the end.
Oh no, go ahead. Sorry.
I'll say I got it in the end. Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember that too. I did. We had like I said, I did this studio recording, and thankfully it was just one song. And I was working with a musician who his name is Brett. I can't remember his last name. He opened for us a couple of times while he was living in Winnipeg. I don't think he's living here anymore. But it was easy to get into his style of music. He plays very folky music, and it was just easy to sort of pick up because we have a folk element to ours, so it was a nice transition. But I'm using my stand-up bass. My wonderful, lovely Sally Sparrow was on that track, and it's practice, 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 and then you go there, you set up. You spend of the 2 hours you have to perform, 30 minutes is blown on setting up, and then you have 2 or 3 jams where you get into it. Mm-hmm. You do the first one. If the first one's good, hey, great, one take. No, but we ended up doing it like 2 or 3 times where they were recording, and we get about 2/3 of the way through the song, and then something would just fall apart.
Yeah.
And then you go back, can't salvage it, got to go back, start again, and go ahead. Now, that's a huge con for Analogue. It's all about performance, right? And like you were saying, Mark, it's dependent on how many tracks you have. You can only get so much in. Well, if you want to do another track in Cubase, well, as long as you got the hard drive space, click, open it up. And then just the idea of doing like digital effects, like I'm just gonna give you an example here. Since I'm using a little digital soundboard, it comes with some built-in stuff. I can work my voice on command, and then come right back without ever doing anything. I haven't altered my voice. I'm just talking, right? Yeah. So that's also a downfall to Analogue. If I was wanting to do something like that. Yeah. Wanting to drop my voice like that, unless you slowed down the sample rate, but then I wouldn't be in time. So I would have had to have sung 3 times as fast to slow it down 3 times to equal what. And so it's like there's a whole process to it. It's doable, but it's extremely difficult, and that might not even work. Right? Yeah. That's a gamble. That's how you would do it, but it's a gamble whether it's going to work, whether it's going to sound right, is the pitch going to be right, or you going to there's all that kind of stuff. So whereas digitally now you can just be like, oh, you can drop that. Yeah. And again, but that doesn't necessarily always work too. There's this myth and about auto tune is going to ruin music, and well, it's great for correcting those little things when you're off like a pitch or something, but it's not going to fix it. It all is performance, right?
Yeah, so. For sure. Okay, so just shout outs to Chris Brett has joined us. Hi, Chris. And he was saying that he uses a UA Apollo Quad, some more high-end units, about $1,900 in that kind of range. 8 channels and some of the best software plugins out there. So that's something else. And Catherine, I think she's. I I'm not sure. There's no question mark, but I think that's a question. Our brother George wants to record an album. Can he do it from his home studio? Well, actually, that's all we're talking about right now. I think everything we've done from the home, and I think pretty much everybody that's inputs pretty much doing it from their basement or from their kids' spare room. And Dolly, I agree. Auto-tune sucks. Okay, there we are. So,
you know what? It was only ever intended to fix. So if you were singing and you missed your high note and you're at the end of the day and your voice is shot and you don't got another track in you, well, we'll fix it with auto-tune. We'll bump you up because you're now a digital component. We can do that without losing it. That is what it was intended for. No, nothing else, and none of this like stuff that they do. That it sounds tacky, it sounds awful, and it's right. But if we understand what it was originally intended for, then it makes perfect sense, right?
Yeah.
So, all right. So I think we can move on into some of the. Do we want to talk about? Oh, should we? You know, we've got a couple of just examples here that we've done. So I've talked about this recording project that I did with the other musician, and Mark, we have a sample of one of the songs that it didn't make it onto our album, but we definitely have a video for it. It's called "Without You." Why don't we? Can we play that one?
Sure.
All right. So this is "Without You" by It's All in the Mind.
Dig that bass, man.
Yeah, exactly.
I took the time to look around. No surprise at what I found. Always waiting
I can't help
for
myself.
me.
There we go. All right. There we go.
So we get a nice little groove going on there.
That was really good. I like that. Yeah. Anyhow.
Yeah. So and keep in mind that was done with Cubase and with the M audio that Mark had. That would have been.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember. Did we just go direct in with a DI? Did we mic? I think we mic'd the.
I think we mic'd up Sally, and you had a DI as well, and I can't remember. I think maybe the DI didn't work, and we had to settle for. There was a lot of trouble with that. Yeah.
Yeah, there was buzz and hum that we couldn't fix with the DI. I put an active DI because these are all just. Okay, so let's keep in mind that this is also something that could happen with analog recording. This little glitch here, because the passive amp or the passive pickup that I have on my upright bass is it's a Realist. It's like $150. It's a piece of copper that sits underneath the bridge where the strings come across, and I'm sure I'm getting that wrong, and all the classical people that will tune in at some point will yell at their monitors saying you don't know what you're talking about. But it sits underneath there, and it picks up absolutely everything. Like if I'm too close to a light, if I'm too close to a wire, it'll pick up the buzz. So we ended up, I think we just ended up recording with both and to see which one was the better recording, and we just used that one. And I believe it was the mic. Yeah. And we took like a condenser, like an the 57.
57 would have been, yeah.
Yeah, and pointed it directly at a certain point on the bass.
It might have been this one. Oh, you can't get on the screen. Oh, you can't see it.
That, or it would have been one of mine that have the green painter's tape on them. That's all say STA on them. It could have been either one.
Yeah. Oh, I get on the camera. There you go. There it is. Right.
It could have very well been that one there. That's entirely possible. But yeah, we just to get it. So that was fully digital. That was captured digitally. That was out of an analog instrument. Now, the next one that we're going to play for you is a song called Another Song About the Sea. It's done by Brett. I can't remember his last name, but I played on it. And a reason I picked that one is just because I'm also using the upright bass. And they're both pretty prominent. And so why don't you guys give that a listen? Here it is, Another Song About the Sea. And should just start off right now.
Okay, we good?
Go for it.
I built a ship out of lost love with my bare hands, and in the evening I'm watching it float away. I built it strong and right so I could sit down by the seaside and daydream, but I've been dreaming of the love that got away. on a ship of my own making. Time gets wasted.
I think that's pretty good. We've got an idea there. So you can immediately probably hear the difference. Now, part of that is how people master. Different producers are going to listen to different songs and they're going to master them. You give them all the same source recordings, they're going to come up with something different. But you can hear that it sounds a little thinner. It sounds different. So that was recorded onto 1.25" tape, and then eventually converted to a digital format. Right after they did the full master and then exported it. So that's sort of the difference. So now you've kind of got a difference of the same instrument, one captured digitally, one captured through an analog, and you can sort of hear the difference. So that's just, again, for your reference. And I guess one other con that we didn't really talk about, Mark, we got those pictures in that recording station there.
There you go.
Mark's going to come up. So this right here, as you take a look, so on the corner there with the mic, sitting down with the mic at him, that's Brett. But in the back there, that clean-shaven young gentleman, 31 years old at that time, was me. And there's another fellow who was playing guitar for us. I don't remember his name. And then there was another girl who actually did the female vocals on it. She was actually in another room. She wasn't in this room here. We were just jamming to lay down the main track, and then Brett re-recorded his vocals and whatnot. But that's what you have to do to have an analog setup. They've got a divider between me and the other guys so that my pickup doesn't pick up their guitars, right? So it was quite an interesting setup. So, and if you flip over to that other one there, Mark, you can see that's me playing. I don't have a ton of space. Directly behind me is my 210 cabinet and my Galen Kruger amp, and we had the exact same problem that we had in the basement recording with Sally, because we just get that really nasty buzz that we couldn't get. We tried running through the amplifier, we tried ground lifts and passive DIs and active DIs, and just couldn't get it done. And eventually I think he took it wasn't an SM57, but it was a condenser mic that was very similar, and we ended up pointing it. You can't see it. It's pointed there, and it's kind of snugged up against the barrier. Yeah. And that's how we recorded it. And I mean, it sounds great. And it's there, but we didn't make it far enough into the song, but there's actually a mistake that I made. we were so excited because we got through one or two tracks, and there was a point where the song slows down, and I was kind of just going between an octave. It might have been a fifth and the fifth root, and it was like a slow kind of thing, sort of to mimic like waves kind of lapping on the shore. And I didn't quite hit the right note, and I didn't at the right time, and it got recorded and it got missed, and nobody picked it up. But you weren't
going to admit to it beforehand, right?
Oh, whatever. If someone pointed it out, I'd say yes. Oh, really? But
so, well, it's funny. I think we mentioned this before, but when I screw up on stage, it's usually my wife. I think Ryan's seen this many times, but I'll screw up and I'll keep going. I'm the consummate professional. Just keep going, but then I'll do the face. When you see that face, yeah, you screwed up. All right, I can't help myself. Anyhow.
Was that when we played at Finn's and you forgot the whole first verse of the one song and you turned around and looked at me?
I remembered the first verse. I just forgot the chords. all of the chords, and I'm going plucky 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 pluck. Doing it, and the one guy that was watching us didn't notice. That's because I just kept going like I meant to do it, and then it was it just suddenly occurred to me right before the second verse. What key? We're in the key of D. I know it now, and I was able to continue.
Was that on? Was that one of ours, or was that a cover?
No, that was one of ours. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I can pick up. I can. I can't remember the title. Yeah. I can play it though. I can play it right now, correctly. Do you challenge me?
Yeah,
go grab my guitar.
Sure. Maybe at the end. That'll be our in credit.
I don't remember what that one was called.
So, Okay, so now these actually lend themselves.
Oh, if you should go. That was what it was.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
Come on out to an It's All in the Mind shows, folks. You're guaranteed to be entertained either by the music or at least our stage presence.
Yeah, and
always watch for this.
Yeah, you'll get an extra special prize if you can get closest to the number of that you see. Yeah. Okay.
Mark's got one of those little golf stroke counters on the back of his guitar. No, he doesn't. So, anyways, hearing those two tracks, we'll should probably bring it back into somewhat close to what we were trying to talk about here. So, we've heard those two tracks now, and actually, before we do it, I was like, Dolly, yes, you were correct. The SM57 is probably one of the best mics that's out on the market. It's right up there with 57 and the 58. Cheap, affordable, durable, like just the best you could have.
Throw them around, they'll last forever.
Yeah, absolutely. I bought all three of my mics off the rental department at Long McQuaid, and they look like they've had a pretty rough life. So, and they all sound great, no issues at all. So, anyways, that all aside, maybe if we mention Sure Enough, they'll give us some free mics or pay us to. Well,
I'm hoping Long McQuaid pick us up and say, "Hey, here's some." Just take your pick of the store. Yeah, just mention us a couple of times. One day that'll happen. Anyhow.
Yeah, one day. So, anyways, we'll talk about some of the myths about digital. These aren't cons, but they're just. It's not cons about analog or myth or bad things. They're just myths. And it's interesting because there's one point that applies to both of them, but the first myth about digital recording is that it's easier. No, I wouldn't say that. What would you say, Mike? Would you say it's easier?
It all depends. It's a lot of the software is really intuitive to use once you know how to use it. And so the hardest part about the digital is the same thing that's hardest about analog, and it's getting the mic at the right level, making sure that if you're playing at the right loudness, at the right volume, and it's all the same problem. It's the differences, of course, how you handle the medium that you're recording it on. So I would say there is a lot of difficulty on both of them. So I would say, yeah, that's not true. It can be a lot harder, but it has the same capturing the sound. Yeah, you still got a lot of those same.
Yeah, so a lot of same principles overlap.
Sorry, I this is funny. So Dolly's responding to your 57 comments. Says 57 and pantyhose works the best. So, yeah, it made me laugh. Thanks, Dolly. That was a good one.
That's your windscreen.
Indeed.
So you don't have to go spend $15 on Amazon.
Or $5 for this. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, right. Anyhow.
So you just have to ask Ollie for some old pantyhose. Dolly's never going to be on the show again if we keep this up.
Oh, well, yes, we have to have Dolly back on. Yes,
it'd be great to have you back on, Dolly. Okay, so anyways, so that's myth number one. It was that it's somehow easier. There are some things that make it really easy, like the idea of punch-ins. So if you mess something up, you can start right. Give yourself a 4-beat count in and get ready. That makes it simpler. But understanding how to set up a mic and giving yourself proper gain structures and headroom and fade in and fade out and doing all this, like that's a whole art, and that doesn't really make it easier or harder. It just makes it different, I think.
Yeah.
So and I think, what do you think? We'll talk about. Do you have your notes up in front of you there, Mark? So note B and note A. So myths about analog A and myths about digital B. Let's leave that one to the end because that's a huge opinion question. All right. So
yes.
So the next one they say myth about digital is that it's easy to make changes, or there's no such thing as an unsalvageable track anymore. Well, I think I would disagree with that 100%. I think there are.
I've thrown away a lot of tracks.
Yep.
Certainly have. Because you kind of get into that set mind as well as it's all digital, so it's all knobs, and you've got everything set up, and you recorded fine yesterday. You leave everything the way it was, and you come in, you record, you think it's great, you go, and you don't even check it because it was great yesterday. And then you come along and you start mixing, you go, there was clipping for almost half the track. I've wasted my time. And now you've got to set everything up again. So, and no, once it's clipped, once you're clipped and you're losing the fidelity of that sound, no, it doesn't matter whether whether it's analog or digital. You can't, there's no salvaging that unless you want to come up with some experimental stuff, which we don't do.
Well, not for at least another 2 albums.
Yeah.
So, so they say there is absolutely no limit to track size, and I guess there is sort of a truth to that. But eventually, you are going to run out of hard drive space. You are going to run out of jump drive space. So, the limit to the track size is true based on what your actual storage medium. Yeah. I think we've already kind of beat it to death with the cons. There's this myth that it's cheaper. Well, it can be, but once you get serious and wanting to get really high quality, that price jumps up pretty quick. So we don't have to really spend a whole lot of time on that.
Right.
Yeah. The last one that we'll talk about for digital is that it devalues talent. Anyone now can be a producer or musician. So what would you have to say about that, Mark?
I would say
you did a lot of the producing for our album.
I would say that that it doesn't. Is that it takes an awful lot of talent to do. I mean, much actually. There's a bit of crossover. We haven't really talked about that either, right? There can be a bit of crossover, particularly when you start mixing and stuff. But anyone can record. Anyone can do the work. It's true, but only people that put the time and the effort in are going to be able to do it well.
Right.
And had I not, I actually had a friend of mine, co-worker, who was a musician, Rob Daniels, who produced my solo CD. And I just can't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. I thought, well, I'm just going to show up and record it in his basement, and he did all the mixing and everything. And yeah, and he insisted I was there when he was doing the mixing and so just making sure the tracks were sounding good. I had no idea how much work it was. And there's a lot of talent. I learned actually a lot from sitting down and watching that. I would never have been able this our CD wouldn't have happened, certainly wouldn't have happened as quickly. Had I not seen someone that knew what they were doing it.
And you know what? I had a fair amount. I produced a single song by myself, and did some sort of this hybrid of analog and digital recording before I met Mark, and I had played it for him. And obviously, it made an impression on him because we have been playing together for a while and have an album, and now obviously a web show. So obviously, it made an impression on him. And I have a background in doing sound and live performance. And a lot of that carries over too. And there's a whole art form to that. So that probably lines up a little easier with the analog side of it, because that is more of a live performance that's just being recorded. Mm-hmm. But when I heard Mark's solo CD, and saw that, it was produced by another guy, and he had mentioned how much he had gotten involved on it. I didn't, and I gave it a listen. I didn't think twice. I was like, oh, well, you obviously know what you're doing. I'll let you run with it, and I'll obviously give my input. Right? I'm not just going to sit back and be like, yeah, whatever. But it worked out really well, right? So, but Mark was you're very dedicated to learning it, right? Whereas, and very intuitive with software. And
it was fun. I enjoyed it. So I mean, it was
exactly, and it actually shows through the quality of the music. Like, it just absolutely shows the labor of love that it was for you. Yeah. I personally like to have things to touch and move and fader up, fader down, knobs here. I like doing that. Mark's got that whole virtual console, and he seems to thrive in that area. I feel like it's mixing with boxing gloves on. It's weird to me, but that doesn't mean that it's bad. I just prefer to do it a certain way. And could I do it? Absolutely. I'd have to get used to it, and I'd probably set up a bunch of keyboard shortcuts because I want to type things instead of screw around with a mouse, but I could do it. That's for sure. So, anyways, we'll move on to some myths about analog. We'll leave that first bullet point for the very end, because that's going to be the ad for it.
Mm-hmm.
So it adds value for music and producers.
Again, it's pretty much this one kind of carries over as well. It's some people are going to be really good at it, and most people are not going to be really good at it. They're just not going to have the training or put in the time, and you've got to kind of work at this stuff. So yeah, it does, but then it also, as a myth, you'd have to say that digital does that too. It does add.
Yeah. So we were kind of clear about this, or like, if anyone could go and buy like a $200 video capture device or sound capture device and play guitar for 6 months and record it, and that's exactly what it's going to sound like. Someone who's been playing for 6 months and doesn't really know what they're doing. Is it good? To them, probably is awesome, because they're like, hey, I'm hearing myself play. Was that first time you ever hear yourself play and it actually sounds okay? And then you listen to it and you're like, oh, this isn't as good, right? So you play and practice, and it gets better and better and better and better and better, right? And then you learn more. So does it add value to know that that's the only way that you can do it on analog? I don't know. Recording is an unforgiving art. You can have like a session going and you're like, yeah, that was awesome. And you listen to it and it was like, that sucked. That was awful. No one shall ever hear this. Delete that track immediately, or cut the tape and burn it. Like, it's right. Yeah. So I've certainly had that. I've convinced myself that this is awesome. I've played this track 5 times. I'm great. Good, done. And I'm like, not, the timing's off. Now what? Great. I'm re-recording.
And start again.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I think we'll leave that as that's more of an experience-based thing. If you have a good producer and you have good musicians and you have someone who's competent behind the board, it's no different than someone who's sitting behind a digital board. You've got the talent there. It's all about talent. The tools, we often focus a lot on tools. This kind of guitar, this kind of pickup, this kind of recording studio, this kind of drum kit, these kind of skins, these kind of sticks, the drum kits in here. We're focusing on the tools and not the talent, right? And the talent has to be there before anything, right? So
yeah, for sure. And
they say this is valuable because it's a physical thing. Well, what do you thoughts on that, Mark?
No, well, value is what it's actually worth rather than what you pay for it, right? It's if it's a good song, if it's got a great sound, if it makes you feel good, well, then it's valuable. Whether it's a physical thing or not, whether it's kind of irrelevant, because it depends. Yeah, if you're listening to it and it's giving you pleasure, there is evoking the emotion that the music is supposed to be. Then that's, for me, would be the value in the recording. It wouldn't be because it's on a vinyl or because it's on a tape or if it's on a hard drive. Does it sound the way that you wanted, that you as the writer and the musician wanted it to come out? That's what the value is, and it's the effect that it has on the audience. So a physical thing is irrelevant. Yeah, there could be pleasure in holding a CD, holding an object, but it's all about, for me, it's about that sound and the emotions that it evokes.
All right. So the big granddaddy question of them all, and I wrote this down for both myths about digital and about analog. Each one boasts that it sounds better than the other.
No, they don't. And yes, they do.
End of discussion.
Yes, yeah. And I think that is kind of, we can probably sum up a number of the points we've made. It depends who's making it, depends what you're recording. It depends how good your sound guy is, how good the musician is. One can sound better than the other. Now, on the other hand, you got a particular style of music. Maybe you want to play some kind of light, some soft jazz, maybe a little Dean Martin or Frank Sinatra or something. Then maybe you want to go for the analog sound that has that kind of a thin but mellow kind of sounds to it. And if you're playing some heavy metal or something, well, don't waste your time with the analog. Just go straight to the digital, and you can do what you want with it. Particularly if you've got some punk and you want to put lots of distortion on. It can make a big difference. Or rather, that picking the wrong one can make a big difference to the sound you want, as much as picking the right one. So, does it sound better? Yes and no.
Both. My argument, because people have always asked. I mean, I have a record player, like a turntable in the basement, and I have some vinyl, and I have digital copies of those of some of those songs on vinyl, and I get asked, "What do you think is better?" And I said, "Well, I don't like lugging my turntable around everywhere, so I'm perfectly happy listening to an MP3 of the same song on my phone. Which one sounds better? They sound different, right? They just sound different. So if you were to record, in theory, if you were able to, or if you set it up so that you have a recording studio where you have a digital on one side and analog, and you're doing the same performance, and all things being equal, you have the same guy who's going to mix it and make it sound exactly the same. They're not going to sound exactly the same. They're going to sound a little different. And there's not that one's better or worse. It's going to come down to, what do you intend the song to be? Which one sounds better for the purpose that you want? Yeah. Analog has a really nice quality that can't really be not easily digitally duplicated. Right? And that's just from the hum of your electronics and the current passing through the wire and all that stuff. And it's a thing, right?
It could be the room. I mean, the particular sound you got in the particular sound that maybe you won't get if you're plugging your electric guitar straight in to your computer, or you're not going to get the same sound as you will at recording analog with an acoustic guitar with the mic, or even a couple of mics several feet away. Right, that can make a huge difference in the sound and in the feel.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes it's right to do that, and sometimes it's not right. And that's where you want to have those, talented people looking after your song that you've taken, hours and months and probably even sometimes years of your lives to write. So, so you just got to make a decision on whether it's right or wrong. So, sure. So there lies our last myth. How are we doing for time here, Mark? We're about
we're good. We're getting close. We did start late, but I don't know. It seems I think we've kind of reached the end of the conversation. I think. What do you reckon? Anything else you want to
add? We've kind of covered. I'm looking over the notes here. We've already, just by virtue of saying, hey, this is what the cons are. Yeah. Well, if you're asking what are the pros, well, that we've kind of covered them. And we've mentioned them. I'm looking at these bullet points. We've mentioned them 8 times, right?
We mixed them up. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah. So, really, I can run through them real quick here. Yeah. Pros of digital recording: relatively cheap and accessible. You can walk into Long and McQuaid or insert music store here and say, I need a digital capture device, point me in that direction, and they will say, here, fine, sir, how much money do you want to spend? It's easy to make minor corrections. You're only really limited to your storage, the size of your storage media, and it's extremely easy to patch in effects either through an effects pedal in line with what you're recording, or actually putting on a digital effect. Like, it's super easy. It's just a matter of filter done, pick which one, right? And then you can tweak all your stuff. But if you don't want to play around with that and you feel like it's like trying to do all that stuff with boxing gloves on, you can take that same pedal and physically plug it in line and catch the same sound. Mm-hmm. So that's really good. All right. So pros about analog. It's a very unique sound that I mentioned this last time. It can't really easily be duplicated digitally, right? It's just that magic of the analog electronics, using vacuum tubes instead of solid state devices, right? Instead of field effects transformers, for all you engineers out there. You're limited to how much. Okay, so this point I really like, and it's all about performance. It forces you to know your song. Performance, right? And then
actually, that's actually a big point because you've playing live is actually completely different from the way. We'll go back a little bit. Doing these shows live is completely different from doing these shows recorded, because we did our first few and we recorded them. And when you're right now, I think we're getting quite adept at moving from one topic to another. We screw up, we'll maybe lose our composure a bit, but we keep going. When we're recording that, you don't do that. It's like, oh, I screwed up, bang, stop, start again. Right, where were we? Look at this, look at the notes, cut, and you can edit it out. And it can make for a more concise and easy watching show, maybe. But it does make for a far less natural performance, because particularly I cheated a lot. So there's a couple of when I was on a lot of the record, not just the CD, but we've got some other singles out there you can check out on the web. And it's been, this particular performance on this chorus and the harmony I did on the chorus over here, I can put those together and they sound, that sounds best, and then copy and paste. So, so I don't I don't even have to really know the song that well in order to record. I just need to know it well enough. I've got the lyrics in front of me. I screw up, stop, back up one. I can loop it and I can just keep going until one works. With a live show, you can't do that. With a live recording, which effectively analog is what we're talking about, recording a performance, you have to know it inside out, backwards and forwards. And the thing about the live recording, and particularly if you're playing live, I've said this before, is you don't have to know your song well enough to play it well. You have to know it well enough to recover when you screw up. And that's that's a completely different level of knowledge of your material. And you've got to know it that well. And you ought to be able to recover quickly if you can.
That's exactly right. And you know what's interesting, because you're talking about moving harmonies around, and of course they actually you'd be surprised how often that actually gets done. Like that's actually just a normal thing. Hey, this harmony here sounds great. This is a happy accident, but it would sound really great at this part of the song, so we'll move it over here, and it works out. On the album Nevermind by Nirvana, they were doing the intro, and they just kept recording new tracks because they wanted it to feel full. And Kurt Cobain was like, no, I want this to be more of a live performance. But Butch Vig, who was doing the producing, said, no, we're just going to do this, or hey, can you record this? So it didn't record properly, or blah blah blah, I wasn't in tune. So they had like these 4 or 5 recordings, and they just ended up syncing up so well because they knew their music so well, right? And so instead of just intentionally double tracking or triple tracking, he kind of just took these two and says, hey, these worked really well together. They're not 100% perfect, but they sound great together. So, I mean, it happens. And that album was actually recorded on an analog board at Sound City. So anyone who's seen that documentary will know the story I'm talking about. So,
well, we can also add to that too. I mean, there are some great tracks. Pretty much everything the Beatles did.
Yep.
And, thinking about, what was it? With the circus song, I can't remember, being for the benefit of Mr. Kites. Now this is I picked this up off one of the many Beatles documentaries I watched. But in order to get that circusy sound, and to get that, what they did was they recorded George Martin recorded himself playing on the organ, and then they cut the physical tape. They cut it into like 6 at 8-inch lengths, threw them up in the air, and then stuck them back together again and played them. That's how they got that sound. So you could do that digitally. And it would be a lot quicker. Would it be the same? Would it sound the same? Well, that's up to you to argue. And then when we look at something like, I think it was Bohemian Rhapsody, where I think Freddie Mercury pretty much sang almost the whole song himself. The other band had some input. But he did it all. They did it all on tape. It's amazing. They just double tracking and recording over song. And of course, every time you record on a tape and you record over it with another track, the first one gets a little bit degraded because then because you're bouncing them back and forward, and so it can be incredibly time consuming. I don't know. I would argue that some of those songs were worth the effort.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, that lends great into the final point. You're limited to how much can be put on a physical piece of tape. So it's like you said, it's great for creative problem solving. So how are we going to do a double track, or how are we going to make this song sound fuller? because when we sing it, it sounds thin. It sounds great live, but when we record it, it sounds thin. It needs to kind of fatten up, so to speak. So, we can only put 2 voices on this voice track, but it still doesn't sound quite enough. So maybe we could put a 3rd voice quietly over a guitar track.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, yeah. I mean, here we go. I'm being creative problem solving. You take that stereo track and you put the stereo track onto, and then you mix it down into a single track, and then record the other voice on the other track. See?
That's right. Yeah. So again, perfectly good example of how we do it, right? I mean, even this, I am limited. I have a graphic EQ that I've EQ'd for my voice, but I've also set this rig up here in case we ever do something live on location, so that when we plug the next mic in, I'm panned completely right, and it goes to the right channel. You'd be going to the left channel, and we'd be EQing your voice for a certain way. So again, it offers creative problem solving. Right, so all those kind of things. That's a huge pro, because you don't get that same concern with Pro Tools or Cubase. I need another track. I just add another track.
Yeah,
that's pretty much it. So, anyways, I think we've kicked that horse enough. So
indeed, it's winning in a way. Here we go. So for those of you are watching us, probably already know how to get hold of us, but just in case, if you're watching this on YouTube later, this is being live streamed to YouTube as well, and you can go check that out. But all the links to everything on www.theinvisibleman.ca, and of course, yes,
that way. There we go. No, that way. Yeah, there we go.
What? Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right. I'm looking at my preview thing. Why is it all right to the other screen? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Right.
Yeah, there we go.
And some of you are going to be watching this on my personal page because we were streaming it there, but you might be on the It's All in the Mind and the Colorado Phil Show Facebook pages. Go check those out if you're not. And of course, you can check out a direct link to our YouTube channel, theinvisibleman.ca/YouTube. Lots of pretty much, I think all of the Invisible Man shows, at least for 2019, are on the YouTube channel. Go check those out for some old ones. And go check out the one for Dolly. That was a good show. For Dolly was on that. So there's a few back there.
We're glad you could join us there, Dolly. Yeah. Thank you very much for joining us.
And your pantyhose. And we enjoyed hearing about your pantyhose. Anyhow, so you can follow me and Phil on Twitter if you're so inclined. There you go. Right so I think we got a show coming up. Next one is on the 31st. It's 10 days. I don't know if we'll get a chance to do another Musical Mire before then. Anyway, that's featuring Ronald Amata, who's one of the guys, one of the people that run the Caravan Open Mic, which have had the pleasure of playing at the Cube downtown Winnipeg. So we're going to find out a bit more about that open mic. I've played at the open mic last year. I haven't had an opportunity to get down there this year yet, though. But see what that's all about and figure out how they got to play there and what wonderful stories they've got. I'm sure they have some characters on that stage there as well. So that'd be a lot of fun. So that's the 31st, which is a Saturday, and that'll be a 2 p.m. Central start. And we were going to have a show on Monday with Carla Bonnell. We're going to do a bit of an HGB Canada party. That's the online radio station she runs. Unfortunately, we just had a little bit of a change in the schedule, personal schedules, and we weren't able to make that happen. So Carla wasn't going to be able to make it. So we're just going to postpone that. And I think that the response we had from people that wanted to be guests on the show, I think we may end up breaking into two parts, so should be a lot of fun. A couple of excuses for a party instead of just one, so that'll be a lot of fun. So keep an eye out for that as well. Watch Facebook, and we'll make some announcements on Twitter as well. Yep, I think that's probably about it. We've got some merch if you want to check it out as well. My nice cup you may have noticed. Links on the invisibleman.ca page. And I think that's it. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us, for Dolly and her pantyhose, and for everybody else that's had some input. Catherine, as always, always there, watching with us as well. So thanks, Catherine. And we'll catch you all in about 10 days. And if we do have another Musical Mire, we will post that well in advance. So
For the three of you that are actually still watching, there's a poll on the Invisible Man on this Musical Mire Analog versus Digital. What do you like better? Are you all about analog, or are you all about digital? So go ahead. Poll will be closed probably sometime tomorrow. So go ahead and vote.
Oh, where is the poll?
The poll is on our Musical Mire page show for this episode. So analog versus digital.
So is that on the Soul in the Mind show page or on the event?
It's on the event. There.
Okay, so you can get to that. You can get to that through the Colorado Phil Show page, the same event, as well as the It's All in the Mind page. So same event, we're sharing it on both events for both pages. Oh, and a big thank you, sorry, for Colorado Phil, who once again is gracious enough to let us streaming on our fellow co-host for the main Invisible Man show. So I can't even talk. I think it's probably time to end. Anyway, so thanks, Phil.
Yep.
And thanks, everybody, for watching us, and we'll catch you soon.
On.
Okay.
Holy and